there's just so many billionaires, yeah, and they've all got it wrong. You know, try and again back to happiness and Jim Carrey and Black Hole. So try being happy with $1 billion. I'm pursuing another model, um, and getting younger every day. You can't buy that with money. You have to buy that with mental practice and discipline and determination and sacrifice. But that is my objective.
Welcome to the Drew Pearlman Show. Think of this podcast as the antidote to the fear, the noise, and the talking heads in the news. The show features an entertaining blend of ancient wisdom, empowering ideas, and cutting-edge, healthy living science to optimize your health and your life. All right, so let's dive in and get started. Today's guest on the show is Hugh Hendry. Hugh is an award-winning hedge fund manager, founder of Eclectica Macro Hedge Fund. He's a market commentator, thought leader, St. Barts real estate investor, and a surfer. And I discovered Hugh on his amazing website with these incredible poetic, philosophical videos on life and suffering and absurdity and much, much more. Hugh, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. You might be saving me. I have been in a kind of lockdown for the last 2 months, maybe longer. I haven't, those videos that you mentioned on my YouTube channel, I haven't done anything over the summer. This is my first tiny little steps back into the scary world of social media.
All right, very nice. And Hugh, you mentioned that you're in the midst of a fast right now, and I think you said day 3 or day 4 right now?
Day four. So I don't know how much sense. Well, some might argue I never make any sense, but at least this time I may have some excuses.
Well, Hugh, maybe start by just telling us a little bit. I was curious to know about the inspiration for these videos. I mean, when we'll put a link at the end of the show in the show notes so people can check them out. But videos called "Life is Absurd," "The Art of Curiosity," "The Dawn of Chaos." Like, what was the inspiration for these videos?
I mean, the inspiration, if it's not preposterous, of course, is me. And I say that really from the sense of having closed down this significant chapter in my life. So for 20 years, I was a hedge fund manager. I was a speculator, and I was like a financial James Bond. I had a license to thrill. I could do whatever I chose to do. And I've actually just completed the draft of my book. I had it rejected today. Books are all about rejection. Life's all about rejection. But I had it rejected today from like one of these blue chip financial publications, and they're like, "Yeah, we like it. We get it. It's kind of crazy. It's got pace. There's kind of weird things happening, but we produce and we publish finance books, and we'll see if they come to regret that. I think I hope I've made one of those. I don't know if your audience would be familiar, but there was a legendary financial character, Jesse Livermore, an American, who was almost as rich as Jeff Bezos after the stock market crash of 1929. And anyway, characters. And sadly, like I think he went bankrupt 3 times after that. Can you imagine, like, going from those great heights to those great lows? So anyway, he wrote a book, The Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, and it doesn't really tell you anything. It's not one of those, well, you must get out of bed and you must turn on your computer screen and you must look at the moving averages and stuff. It's his life, and he was this kind of really intense, strange guy that like didn't come from the typical neighborhoods that populate Wall Street and London and the world's capital markets, and kind of that's what made him electric. And anyway, so I've written my reminiscences of an acid capitalist It was as if I was on speed, and so those videos really, I think, reflect all the thinking that I've been doing. So I closed my hedge fund down in 2017. Um, kind of, found myself in a cave for about 2 years, kind of trying to come to terms with the passing and its implications. And so those videos are really a response to answer your question.
Mm. And I mean, Hugh, so the more research I did on you, I mean, you're a living legend in the world of finance. And I was looking at one of your videos in my own words, and I thought you talked really honestly and openly, as you said, about making millions, losing interest, the whole, I think you were talking about in your heart, only got
Mm,
bigger. And
mm,
Hugh, it reminded me of that quote by the actor Jim Carrey when he said, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they can see that it's not the answer. And I would just love you to speak a little bit to that, that very honest assessment of just, making lots and lots of money, but still maybe, as you said, the hole only got bigger.
yeah. So, honesty is this bedfellow, this fellow passenger, which is accompanying me on this life journey. And honesty, I mean, it sounds noble, but I got to tell you, it gets in the way. It gets in the way of commerce. It gets in the way of success. I remember, when I was a hedge fund manager, I remember my pitch to clients would be to tell them like all the bad things they should know about me, all of my faults. I used to say to them that I use this caricature, and when I question that word caricature today, maybe it was actually the reality that I was a paranoid schizophrenic. That I heard voices in my head, which those voices came from the rhythm of markets. I liked shapes and patterns and colors and music. I am not, I don't do Greek algebra. And, um, and so that, and from the rhythms that I could determine from those charts, and again, I was using 17th century chart technology. I really reject this myth of modernism that we're somehow smarter than the generations that preceded us. We're not. We're as dumb and as vulnerable as those who preceded us. And from those patterns, I would invest. I would put at risk $1 billion of capital, more billions of dollars of capital. And so I was very much alarmed and terrified at my actions as I was, I was very, very engaged. And I remember, my marketing team was like, "Do you really have to tell people these crazy stories?" And it's, an action. And you know what? And I thought I was treating the clients or potential clients with respect, but actually, in all walks of commerce, people don't want to hear the truth. Like these were people that had taken the effort to come and visit me at my office, from places as far away as South Korea, Japan, and the far reaches of the US, both the western coast and wherever. And they came because they thought I was pretty hot to trot, and they wanted to hear confirmation, like that they were right. And there I am, and I'm like, well, I don't know. You may have made a mistake. I'm an idiot. So honesty's kind of always been there. I was, legendary is one of your words, and award winning always mystified me. I mean, awards in finance are rigged. You buy awards. I would never claim to be award winning when it comes to an investor. And then actually there was a really intriguing pivot point in my life where I was persuaded to be less honest. I was persuaded to be less of who I am. And clients loved it. So like after if anyone knows me, that if I've got any bows in my arrow, it's that I navigated 2008 in a successful, at the end of the day, in a successful manner. I think I achieved returns of 34%. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't linear. But when just about all the great and the good, lost money, I made a decent slug. And yet, 6 months after that, I was managing $50 million, which in the context of hedge funds, even though we're talking about 13 years ago, is nothing, is nothing. And so I was persuaded to tone down the honesty, and it worked. After 2 years, we were managing $1.5 billion across all funds. And I was taking antidepressant pills. You know that expression, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the best of times financially, it was the worst of times creatively. And I had to make a decision, as Jim Carrey is suggesting. That I was like, okay, I've had the fame, I've had the financial rewards, but it's creating this huge, and I always carried a dark hole with comedians and jesters and people that have voices, have inner demons, and I had to make a choice, and the inner demons dictated that I had to destroy the monolith that I created. And so I switched back into honesty mode. And I said to clients at the end of 2013, hey, what if I was to tell you I turned bullish? Is that something you were interested in? And I was very much taking a parody the parody from the HBO series Entourage about Hollywood and a young actor on the up. And there's a producer director from the 1970s, and I think it's actually based on the chap who did the movie Sting. But he's not had a success for a decade or so. And he's saying to people, hey, listen, what if I could tell you this movie is going to make, it's going to gross $400 million. We're going to win 4 Oscars. And I'm only looking for like $10 million. Is that something you would be interested in? It was absurd. And he was typically rejected. Anyway, that letter. So I was I'd been forced into this rabbit hole, or not even a rabbit hole. I'd been forced into this caricature, that word again, of being a bearish investor, someone that was just, the future was always dark. And so the idea that I could express the notion that, hey, my best guess is markets are just going to keep going higher, led to great dismay. I was a diversifier in a world where my clients were worried about everything. And they headed to the exits. And so we went back to $50 million. And then in 2007, a great, huge hurricane hit St. Barts, almost destroyed my new, wonderful, beautiful house. It was closed for 9 months, but I lost my last kind of major client, and business was over. So honesty's I'm glad you asked about honesty.
Did you find that you had to escape the rat race?
Yeah, I had to repair myself. And I'm halfway through a wonderful book. Where's my Kindle? It's in the bedroom. I damaged my brain. I've been subject to, the various chemical reactions from being in mortal combat. Now, I would not dare have the conceit to compare myself to those amazing young kids that are forced into these dreadful and terrifying, conflict regions in Afghanistan and wherever else. But, I was a drama queen. I spent more days than is healthy going, oh my God, we're gonna die. And like when we looked at the profit and loss of the speculative fund that I was responsible for, and that, and I really believed that. Oh my God, I'm gonna die, and the body goes, oh well, we've got to do flight, and we've got to drown you in this, this chemical, cesspit. And so St. Bart's, there is a healing process. The book is all about the chat. I think it's called Chatter, the voices inside our head. So given I spent my career talking about voices in my head, it felt that I should read it. And it just says, there's a wonderful repair. It's almost like the repair that's reputed to like LSD and what is it called, MSMDA MDMA,
Yeah.
um, absolve not absolving, dissolving the ego, and just the awe and the wonder at this island, which is so incredibly beautiful, is something which remains with me. Yeah, I'm sitting here today. I'm gazing at this infinite view of the sea, and I can see islands. The wind has dropped, and I can see 50 kilometers away. And I'm sitting here, albeit alone, in this massive, beautiful house. Um, and my creativity is back. I'm having fun. We'll see where that takes me.
What are, this is another question, Hugh. What are some of the daily things, like if we were with you there, what are some of the things you do every day that really, some of the practices or rituals that keep you feeling more grounded and peaceful?
Well, not just grounded. I swear, it's like the fountain of youth. I constantly feel 10 years younger. And I reject this notion of like the wealth on Wall Street and the I mean, there's just so many billionaires, yeah. And they've all got it wrong, you know. Try, and again, back to happiness and Jim Carrey and Black Hole. So try being happy with $1 billion. I'm pursuing another model, and getting younger every day. You can't buy that with money. You have to buy that with mental practice and discipline and determination and sacrifice. But that is my objective. I am getting younger every day. And partly that's what you see in those videos. Yes, I look like a clown, but it's a clown who's getting younger, and it's the it's the it's treatment for me, because if I ever get this damn book published, you'll see that I began life like Benjamin Button. I was like a serious old man. I was like the weirdest 10-year-old you can imagine. Anyway, that's for another time. So daily rituals. Um, I get out of. I still got that. Let's call it brain damage. I've still got debris floating in my mind, and so the hardest time for me is waking up. I sleep well because I'm very, very engaged and active, but waking up is when those demons and the debris starts colliding, and so I've just got to get out of bed and I got to do something. And my favorite thing, I run 5 kilometers barefoot on the beach of Saline, beautiful natural wild, running through the water. And previously, my office in London was like a kilometer or so away from my house, and I used, it's called a G-Wiz. It's one of the first electric vehicles, but really it was like a golf cart. And I had to use that because I had arthritis in my toe and my knee. And since I've embraced nature and the people we are, or we're 99.9. Our genealogy hasn't really. It takes a lot of time to change our genealogy, and there just hasn't been enough time to change our genealogy, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But running barefoot on the sand through the salt water, all of that pain has gone. Again, the conceit of modernity. Nike make fashionable trainers, but they give look at runners. Every runner has a strap on their leg because you can't run barefoot in parks. You can run barefoot on beaches, but heels are the obscenity of modernity, if you will. Cushioned heels destroy your feet because they interfere with the internal dialogue from the foot to the brain. Anyway, I'm not making any sense. So I run, I practice, would you believe I practice hot yoga in a very hot place, nice. 3 times a week. I surf, but I daddy surf. Which is to say, I take the wave with I stand up, sup.
Oh, okay.
And we're very fortunate in St. Barts. We've got about 3 or 4 breaks, and I practice at the very worst because I just would. I'm just not good enough to. I don't like mixing. I think it's unfair. And so, if anyone's familiar with St. Bart's, I am to be found typically about 5:30 when I kind of take a break from thinking and whatever. 5:30 in the evening. We call it Airport à Gauche, to the left of the airport on Saint Jean Beach or Saint Jean Bay, and that's wonderful. And then this week with my fasting, and again fasting, that's what we used to do. You could like phone a delivery for a pizza, like you couldn't find food and you would fast. We're built for it. So again, I'm embracing the inner caveman or whatever. Um, and so with the fasting, I normally, and you're interrupting me, Drew, because normally at this time I walk. It's about 1.4 kilometers
Oh,
from my house to this other beautiful beach. Again, just stunning nature, stunning beauty on this island. And I
yeah.
walk 1.4 kilometers to the beach of Gouverneur, which is famous or infamous for having this huge house of the Russian tycoon Abramovich tycoon. I use with inverted commas. Um, but I walk there. I take a swim. I swim the length of the beach, and then I walk back up this steep hill. But I do so barefoot, and so just it's meditative, where you have to just again give thought to every step.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, that's my kind of. Oh, and then at my house I have pickleball. I think there's so many names for it. I think in the States you call it pickleball, or in Europe I want to call it paddle. I discovered it in Venice Beach, and it was called paddle.
Oh,
But in
yeah.
Europe, paddle has the influence of playing against the back wall, like squash. This is just it's mini tennis, and you play with this preposterous like wooden bat, and um, I love it. We play. I've made a breakthrough because tennis doesn't love me, um, and I've made a breakthrough where we play and we listen to French rap music, and we drink, or I drink at least, gallons of tequila, and the tequila I've just always been stiff, tight, dark holes and demons, and I'm playing this game that I love, and the tequila lets the introduces looseness, and the music is kind of groovy, and it's just the best thing in the world. So there you
That's
go.
that's wonderful. Hugh, that's great. So, if anybody's listening right now who is maybe experiencing some of that darkness, maybe feeling a little hopeless about their life right now, what would be something that if they were sitting with you that you'd tell them? Maybe one thing that they could do today to take their life in a new direction.
Boy, that's a really good question that yeah, I just don't know. Um, do it, do something. But I mean, and do something. And that's what I did. Do something. And for me, the release valve was like doing exercise.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's who I can't say this. I don't have any. I was going to say I don't have the medical professionalism, but actually, I'm reading another book about mental illness, and it's not obvious that medical professionalism exists in the world of mental health, because it's really just you should take a drug, and and the doctor should be remunerated by the healthcare provider. Um, Sadly, for about 9 out of 10 instances, but
Mm.
I want to say that people in those situations, well, I'm not going to make that generic thing, but for me, without a doubt, that there's a strong narcissistic line running through whoever I am, and so doing something for me, and like just being responsible for my well-being is just a start. Like once you're responsible, once you're doing something and achieving something on one level, then like you create a habit, and habits. You create good habits rather than bad habits. So it's very important that you do something.
Mm. Absolutely. Hugh, in your eyes, I've been asking this question to people. What does it mean to be human in today's day and age? I know I'm
Boy,
asking you all these big questions here, but
uh, well, to be human today's the answer is very very simple. I answered that earlier. it's the same as it always was. That we are these crazy monkeys that are, and then we're descended from monkeys. What is it? We have about 40% of our bones around our feet. I mean, that makes no sense unless you're climbing trees, But anyway, the and your spine and your lower spine. I mean, again, these are defects, but moving to walking on standing up and walking on 2 feet definitely had a massive benefits, despite the feet and the spine. But we haven't changed. Don't believe we've changed. We're the same. We are the same. We are the same as the speculators who got it all wrong in 1929. We are the same as the people who voted, if they did vote for these various awful dictators through history. The authorities are the same as the despots and the sovereign kings and queens that debased money and set off on dreadful war campaigns against their neighbors. Yeah, we are destined to follow a pattern of excess, from excessive gloom to excessive joy, and that's who we are. And we should all read. I understand that literature, English literature, in terms of university admittance, is collapsing. Universities are really struggling to fund it. Literature is so important that forget these what do they call, virtual reality glasses or whatever they say. Read a book. A book is so amazing for you because you actually, what happens is you role play, and you start, you get annoyed because you've made the decisions for them. Then they make another decision. You're like, why are you doing that? You're a jerk. Or like, wow, I missed that. And it's like, that is so rich for your mind. And you can read things from hundreds of years ago because, again, we haven't changed. So that's my answer.
Do you have a, is there a poet, or is there a writer that you go back to in times when you're looking for something, some form of wisdom or something? Is there someone that you go to, that you sort of go back to from time to time?
Well, again, this is where my mind just lets me down. Yes, I do. The French philosopher behind the lines of life is absurd, Albert Camus. It's with an S, but you don't pronounce the S. Camus. Albert Camus is a great inspiration. I spent 2 years living in. I'm a Francophile. This is a French island. I spent 2 years living in Paris, and so and the pretentiousness of French intellectuals is always something quite appealing. And then there's some amazing American writers. There's one, I can never remember his name, but I remember picking up. I got to read this book. It's The Zoo where the Fed being the Federal Reserve, where the Fed is God, and that wasn't the title. It was I don't even know what the title. I introduced Federal Reserve because again it's what reading and stuff is so good at, is conscious REM. I had all these puzzles and problems in my head, and just reading beautiful prose allowed me to find keys to unlock doors. Because for 20, going on 30 years, I was charged with seeing the future, which was preposterous. Which is why no one wants honesty. It's all a myth. So it's like, no, don't tell the truth. So yeah.
That's great. Hugh, if you had the opportunity to travel back in time, say 40 years or so, what words of wisdom would your current self share with your younger self?
It would be like, well, if it was, I guess, almost 50 years ago, it would be like, go to Villa Nelcott and hang out with the Rolling Stones when they're making Exile on Main Street. But sadly, I was too grown up back then. Whereas now, I'd love to do that. Advice, I could, chill out. The words would be, gravestones don't matter because you've passed by that point. But in terms of an inheritance or leaving something, if people, and it doesn't, if people were reading that, like I read that book and I read it wrong, the zoo with the Fed is God. If people are reading whatever it says on that gravestone, and what they read is, there lies someone who enjoyed life to the full, that's the goal. Like people that vaguely know you and they just happen to, oh my God, there's the grave of Hugh. And it says born, blah, 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 blah. But what they read is imprinted in their mind is, there lies, the soul of someone who just went for it and enjoyed it.
That's beautiful. Hugh, people that are listening that want to learn more about you, that want to watch your videos and find out about this upcoming book that I know I'm sure maybe by the next time we speak, it'll be published, but how can people learn more about you? Where should they go?
So my name is Hugh Hendry, and you have to put them together, and then I had to add official. So Hugh Hendry Official on Instagram and on YouTube. And typically, if I can get my ass back into gear and start taking and expose myself to the ridicule of strangers once more, I'm going to I will be doing a kind of weekly podcast, and I film it, and you can watch it on YouTube and you can listen to it on the various podcasts. But be careful, because there is a grotesque sleazeball who is masquerading under Hugh Hendry Official, with official spelled, ICIAIL, and he's an imposter. And I don't know how to get rid of this sleazeball. I think he's trying to get people to trade crypto.
Well, it's interesting, Hugh, because when I first reached out to you, I think I reached out to him first. And then I saw your post that said, don't trust this guy, this imposter guy. And then I contacted you, but I think I got to him first. And, but yeah, he is lurking out there.
He or she is like, oh yeah, how are you? And you start telling them, it's like going to get your palm read. You tell them lots of things about yourself. Oh yeah, how is your husband? Oh, sad he died. And how did you know he died? You just told me, So yeah. But yeah, check out and there's a hughhendry.com, which has got nice pictures. But yeah, check out the YouTube. I have, like, I don't want to bitch about these things. It's tough. I've got 8,000 subscribers, and I'm pitching a lot of curious and perhaps deviant financial kind of upside down logic, and which could masquerade as advice or knowledge. And when you look at people and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers and they're idiots, and how you have to concentrate on these absurd thumbnails, that we're all just slaves to these algo systems on YouTube and stuff. It's just, anyway, I don't care. My grave's gonna I may end my journey on this, my solitary journey on this life, certainly thinner given my fasting, certainly with a repaired knee and toe given my running on the beach, but but I may have only 8,000 subscribers, but it's going to say, there lies the soul of someone who spent life to the maximum.
That's great. Hugh, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Drew Pearlman Show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In the words of Mark Twain, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, and catch the trade winds in your sails. Explore, dream, discover, and stay well, everyone.